Hello, Inform Scotland followers and friends. I have updated the stats again on the informscotland.uk website. If you go to Graphs Daily ScotGov data tab on the website, you'll find my blog from 10th of September. I thought, since I felt like there were some bombshells, or maybe not so much bombshells because we kind of knew what was going on already, but I said some really big things in the last blog, so I wanted to update you on the progress. So it looks like 3 days on, our fifth wave of coronavirus has peaked. You can just see there, this is waves for the whole pandemic. This is graph 1 on the blog. You can see that it looks like cases are peaking and possibly starting to drop a little bit, but time will tell over the next couple of days. I'm fairly confident that we are seeing a reduction because the percentage positive of new tests is also falling and has actually been for a few days now. So that's a really, really good sign about where this epidemic is heading. We're still, though, well above the peak January level. Putting that into context by day of the week and the sort of consistency of the high positivity rate, this is evidence that we are actually looking at a true epidemic in one sense, or we're seeing something, genuinely a lot of positives coming back, because the positivity by day of the week, you can see that in the last few weeks there, we have had the highest positivity days ever. Now, this is the fourth wave on this graph, but the previous wave, which was April and May 2020, we weren't doing anything like the same amount of testing, so it's kind of hard to compare the numbers, but this has been the highest positivity period we have ever seen consistently. We've still got this weird pattern of some days of the week being higher than others. You're much more likely to test positive if your test's coming back on a Monday or a Tuesday or a Sunday. Graph 4, I've said, is literally taking my breath away. Every time I update it, I'm absolutely amazed, possibly horrified is a better word to describe it. This is community versus NHS lab tests done. So you can see that NHS testing has remained that's the red bars, they've remained reasonably consistent. Recently, we have seen a colossal increase in community tests. Now, that may indicate that there is more symptomatic COVID out there, so people are seeking out tests, but it could also be that these increased tests are contributing to the number of positives coming back, just because it will be, because the more tests you do, the more false positives you're going to get. So there's certainly some contribution there. This is just incredible, but I've spoken about it before. Yesterday was our highest ever testing day in the community. We did 48,000 tests. That's like 1% of the Scottish population, close enough. It's too much. There's no benefit to doing this amount of testing, and it's quite an indication, I think, that people are just reaching for tests automatically now, and I'm not quite sure how we're ever going to get out of this situation if people are still so determined to test all the time. There'll have to be a change in that trend, unless we're going to go on like this forever, which seems completely unsustainable. It's such a colossal use of resources, which could be better used elsewhere, probably, I would suggest. This graph 5, I spoke about all these things in the last video, so anyone who wants to get more detail on what I'm talking about, I don't want to be just repeating myself all the time, but this graph shows positive tests, that's the red line, against the number of tests conducted. And you can see that unlike with the previous 3 waves, 1, 2, 3, this rise in tests, positives, has coincided with a rise in tests, unlike those others. There was a slight correspondence there where there was the last wave where we had an increase in tests, and that coincided with an increase in positives. But these the tests and number of positives have been going up in synchronicity with one another, which is quite strange compared to the previous waves. Hospital occupancy is looking pretty horrifying. We are having a hot September, and we are seeing very high numbers of patients in hospital with COVID. Yesterday there were quite a lot of distress signals being sent out by NHS trusts. NHS Fife was announcing that they were not doing any non-urgent procedures or something. We are looking at, in the next week or so, reaching the same hospital occupancy as we reached in the second wave in November last year. At the same time, the number of delayed discharges has increased by 50% compared to the winter time. This is also really, really bad news for summertime. All of these signals are showing that we are going to be having a tough winter at this rate. Comparing hospital occupancy in 2021 with hospital occupancy in 2020, that's with COVID occupancy. Last year, on the 11th of September, the Scottish Government recounted the number of patients in hospital because they'd been miscounting before. And on the 11th of September, there were 45 patients in hospital across the country. Now we have 977. That's 22 times as many as we had last year. Isn't that extraordinary? The unfavourable comparisons continue in graph 8. Here we have deaths in 2021 compared to 2020. You can see that our deaths are going up now quite sharply, but hopefully that's an averaging artifact and it will calm down a bit. But it is looking like we're probably going to reach another peak in deaths. This was not happening last summer. Here is hospital with COVID occupancy across the country. Once again, you can see Glasgow, which is the blue line, the pale blue line at the top there, is, I mean, the steepness of that increase in hospitalisations is just incredible. And it looks like we're going to reach that November level, I would say, within a week or so. All the other hospital regions are reaching similar levels as in the November wave. It's a bit of a mess it's a bit difficult to read that graph just because all of the different traces, that's all of the regions in Scotland are included in that graph. And just a reminder that this is all with a very significant proportion of the population vaccinated. So we've got the yellow line showing first vaccine doses delivered, the green line showing second vaccine doses delivered, and the top line, that orange straight line, that's the population of Scotland. So we're approaching 80% of the population fully vaccinated, but the rate of vaccinations is slowing down very significantly now. People who have not been vaccinated yet have clearly made a decision that they are not going to get vaccinated, or they're not rolling over easily despite the coercive techniques being used by the government now. And so we're just going to see fewer and fewer second doses delivered. We're expecting Whitty to announce that children are going to be vaccinated, so presumably that number will start to go up again, the vaccine doses. Just in my final comments on the blog, I've said, how's the vaccine working for Scotland? Not well. We urgently need explanations to these phenomena we are seeing. So far, the vaccine has not reduced hospitalisations due to COVID at all. Quite the reverse, in fact. There is no indication it has whatsoever on a population level. We do have a lot more cases now, And the government seems to be using this to show that the disease severity is lessening. So this is what we're saying. We've got all these cases and they're not being hospitalised at the same rate as they were in the previous waves. But it's summertime, and you wouldn't expect people to be going to hospital with a coronavirus in the summertime. So you're kind of, if you're comparing to the winter waves, you're comparing apples and oranges. It's not really meaningful. It's a bit more complicated than that. But yes, we are seeing less hospitalisation per case and fewer deaths per case. The point is, our deaths are going back up again. And we have 80% of the population almost vaccinated. So how can it be reducing disease severity on a population level? I mean, you could argue, okay, unvaccinated people are experiencing more severe disease than they have previously. Why is that? Why is this disease becoming more severe in unvaccinated people then? What is it? But I mean, what the data are showing, and websites like Travelling Tabby illustrate this quite well, that vaccinated people seem to be at no advantage in terms of infection or disease severity now, or very small advantage in terms of disease severity. So when we are seeing all these moralising messages coming from our NHS trusts about how we should get vaccinated and we should reduce the number of people that we're seeing, is the solution for more vaccination when this amount of vaccination has happened and we're still seeing loads of people in the hospital and our hospitals can't cope? I mean, if it's not working, is more of the same the answer? The question as to why so many are getting infected at this time of year with so many vaccinated is the first question that arises looking at these data, and this is the question that is completely unaddressed. It's not good enough for Scotland the way we are being treated with coercion to get vaccinated coming now from government. And if the vaccines are the problem, as predicted by some vaccinologists, then rolling them out to children is absolutely the worst thing to do. It's all risk and no benefit. What are the answers to the questions these data raise? Now, on my last blog, we had a comment that about polio and how polio was eradicated using vaccines and that people die because of anti-vaxxers. Polio, I don't know about, because I'm not a clinician and I haven't spent any time thinking about vaccines really my whole life until now. I'm not talking about vaccines in general. I'm talking about this vaccine and the evidence of my eyes and my senses when I read the data on the situation in Scotland now. It is an absolutely colossal error just to assume that every vaccine is good, every medicine is good. It's ridiculous. The point is, this is not working. We were told that the vaccine was the way out. We were told that if we vaccinated the vulnerable, that would be all that was required, and then we would reduce hospitalisations. That's not happened. We need an answer why. It is not unreasonable to ask why this is happening when we're vaccinating everybody. And when vaccinologists have come out and said, watch vaccinating your way out of an epidemic because it can just make things worse. That's what's happening here? And I'm getting so tired of this label anti-vaxxer being thrown around like people like me are idiots who just don't understand that a vaccine's the answer. The vaccine has not been the answer, and this is the first vaccine that I've ever observed not being the answer. And I want to know why it's not working. Because people are getting injured and dying from these vaccines. We know this. It's been reported in the newspapers. And so why is it that we're not to be worried about those deaths? I don't understand that. I'm worried about all deaths, both from COVID and from the vaccine. And I don't think that that's unreasonable. Don't let anybody tell you that it is unreasonable. Email your MSPs and your MPs, email your councillors, try and speak to them on the phone. They need to be held to account for this because they have implemented this solution, and it's not a solution because the hospitals are not able to cope in Scotland now. Stay sane, stay strong, stay tuned, and remember, I love you.